Alright, number 9, The Simpsons predicted Toys R Us shutting down. It was actually pretty funny in how they showed that Toys R Us was shutting down. All they did was they went up a ladder and they turned the R around, and then that means it shut down. That was my reaction when I heard Toys R Us was shutting down. I was pretty sad about it. But for some reason, Toys R Us here in Canada, they're still around. So I did a little bit of research. Toys R Us has been around for over 70 years, since the 40s, which sucks because it's technology, it's our lazy generation that is getting these big companies like this to shut down. People can just order on Amazon and online. I actually miss Blockbusters where you can actually go into the store, you can check out the new releases, and you can rent them. But now I just sit in front of Netflix all day trying to pick what I want to watch. Going back to Toys R Us, the company's North American operations filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy production back in 2017. In 2018, they added their British operations into that as well. Earlier on this year, they announced that Toys R Us will be shutting down all of its US and British stores. I think by now most of them have been shut down. And for up here in Canada, well, we'll see what happens. At number 8, somehow The Simpsons predicted the Nobel Prize winner. Milhouse is a pure genius and a psychic because he predicted the winner of the Nobel Prize back in 2010, which is 6 years before Holstrom actually won. Holstrom won the 2016 Nobel Prize in economics for work on contact theory and how to evaluate whether things should be government run or privately owned. Number 7. Back in 1998, The Simpsons episode Lord of the Dance, you can see Homer and Bart Simpson decided to recycle grease for money. So after Homer found out that the grease can be sold for money, he started his own operation. This actually became reality years later. In fact, 15 years later, people were caught stealing grease from restaurants in order to make some money. Well, apparently you can actually use grease to run your car instead of gas. So with the gas prices going up in New York, people actually started stealing cooking grease. So just when you thought you've heard it all. The Simpsons predicted the Rolling Stones will be on tour in 2010 during a 1995 episode. This bold prediction that came true is at number 6. During the episode titled Lisa's Wedding, there was also a scene where she was lying in bed and beside her was the Rolling Stones poster. And on the poster it said Steel Wheelchair Tour 2010. The Rolling Stones have had an incredible run. They've been touring since 1962. They are actually still touring today. Right now they're on their No Filter tour. There doesn't seem to be any slowing down despite their age. During the 2010 episode, it looked like they were done touring after their successful Bigger Bang tour. At the time, it was the highest grossing tour of all time, earning over $550 million. And just when it seemed like the Rolling Stones, well, they might have been done touring, they toured again 5 years later, just like The Simpsons predicted. The legendary Mick Jagger is 75 years old and he's still rocking out, and his concert tour will end next year in June. The drummer for the Rolling Stones, Charles Robert Watts, is 77 years old and he's still beating the drum. Now at number 3, we have The Simpsons predicting Guitar Hero. Take a look at this picture right here. This was aired in 2002. You can see Mick Jagger and Keith Richards giving Homer Simpson a jacket that has Guitar Hero printed on the back of it. 3 years after the episode aired, Guitar Hero actually came out. I don't know if the name of the game was inspired by The Simpsons, but it's pretty weird. I got kind of good at Guitar Hero, but then I stopped because I think I just got used to all the same songs. I never really produced more of it. And I don't even know if they still produce newer Guitar Heroes, like versions, or if they've released more songs into the game. Finally, number 1, we have the donut-shaped universe theory. How the heck did The Simpsons predict this one? Imagine they also predict the flat earth theory as well. I mean, maybe they have. So it was Homer Simpson that came up with the donut-shaped earth theory. And you know what? It was amazing seeing Stephen Hawking making another appearance on The Simpsons. He has made so many of them. And at number 8 is the three-eyed fish in season 2, episode 4, titled 2 Cars in Every Garage and 3 Eyes on Every Fish. Bart went fishing into the river right next to the power plant, and he actually ended up catching a fish with 3 eyes. Well, over 10 years later, a three-eyed fish actually was caught in a river that was fed by a nuclear power plant. I feel like this episode serves as a really big warning to dangers of pollution. I wonder what other sorts of mutated creatures are walking and swimming around. Our number 6 slot goes to autocorrect. I mean, this one isn't technically a disaster, but it definitely has led to some disastrous miscommunication. In Lisa's on Ice in season 6 episode 8, students at Springfield are trying to make a note on their device to try to beat up Martin, but the device autocorrected to say eat up Martha. It was making fun of Apple's Newton device, which came years before any sorts of, sophisticated iPod Touch or iPhone even entered enter the market. It apparently served as inspiration for technology from Apple to improve the keyboard. But that doesn't stop my autocorrect from changing words that I don't want to be changed and making me so ducking mad. Our halfway slot goes to a white tiger attack. Well, this one happened in season 5, episode 10, titled Springfield. In this episode, a Simpsons universe duo called Gunter and Ernest, clearly meant to resemble Siegfried and Roy, if you guys remember those two. They were viciously attacked on one of their Vegas shows by a white tiger. Then 10 years later, Roy Horn of Siegfried and Roy actually was attacked by their white tiger at their show. Although injured, Roy luckily survived the attack. Next up, number 4 is the gory billboard. Season 4, episode 6, titled Itchy and Scratchy. The movie shows a billboard for a movie obviously called Itchy and Scratchy that sends Scratchy's blood shooting into cars that are just driving by. Over 15 years later, 2008, a billboard for Kill Bill Volume 1 did the exact same thing, splattering a parking lot and all of the cars in it with bright red blood. I really hope that stuff washed off easily, because I think I'd be really upset if I found my car had fake blood all over it. I mean, real blood or fake blood, I still have to clean that stuff up. Take number 3 slot is one that's honestly insane to me. In the Simpsons movie, Marge threatens to expose the government's secrets. I wonder what secrets they have. Well, she's brought into a room that is filled with computer monitors and government officials listening in on private phone calls, trying to find incriminating statements or evidence against members of the public. Well, 6 years later, Edward revealed to the public in a huge scandal that the NSA actually is listening in and spying on us. I mean, how did the Simpsons know? This breach in privacy and security was absolutely huge, and honestly, it still kind of scares me, the control that the government has. Coming in number 2 is the God Particle. I'm talking about season 10, episode 2, The Wizard of Evergreen Terrace. Homer decides to become an inventor. In one scene, he is standing in front of a super complicated equation on a chalkboard. Well, as it turns out, this equation accurately predicted the mass of the Higgs-boson particle, or the God particle, before it was even discovered. I know this one isn't technically a disaster, but it's absolutely crazy to me that the Simpsons predicted the particle that explains how everything in the universe exists and where it all came from.
Starting off this countdown, we have the Higgs-boson particle. In season 10, episode 2 of The Simpsons, Homer becomes inspired by the work of Thomas Edison. As a result, he tries to become an inventor. In one scene, we see Homer scribbling on a chalkboard. At the bottom, it reveals a math equation, which wasn't thought to be anything big, just Homer doing some scribbles. Until more than a decade later, when scientists discovered the Higgs-boson particle, otherwise known as the God particle. People then realized Homer's work was a lot like this particle. Like, what kind of sorcery is this? Do they got a team of scientists working for them or something? Seriously, the writers either must be super smart or they have psychic powers. Or both. And at number 9, we have the grease scheme. And if you guys like this video and you want to see more videos from us, then make sure to give this video a big thumbs up because it really helps us out. So in the 1998 episode titled Lord of the Dance, which is from season 10, episode 1, Homer comes up with an idea to steal grease from a bunch of places, like his kid's school cafeteria, and then he sells it to make a quick buck. Well, guess what? People started doing this in real life. In New York, people were going around stealing grease from restaurants. It was so bad that apparently $75 million worth of grease gets stolen each year. Restaurants had to start hiring people to safely remove their grease so that people wouldn't break in and steal it. Sounds absolutely crazy, right? Well, somehow The Simpsons knew that this was going to happen. Or maybe people were influenced by Homer in that episode. Either way, it's pretty creepy. Coming in at number 3, we have advanced technology. So somehow The Simpsons knew how technology was going to be like for us in the future. A lot of these predictions were made in the 1995 episode titled Lisa's Wedding. In this episode, Lisa visits a psychic that shows her what her future is like. And in one scene, we see Lisa's husband Hugh talking to a watch, which then literally turns into a phone. Sound familiar? Watch that you can use as a phone? Yeah, an Apple Watch. In this episode, they also predicted FaceTime, since there's a scene where we see Lisa talking to her family on what looks like a FaceTime call or a video chat or whatever, I don't know. Again, this was done back in 1995, and the Apple Watch came out in around 2014. So The Simpsons are just always ahead of the game. Coming in at number 2, we have the NSA spying scandal. In 2013, former contractor for the CIA, Edward Snowden, revealed that the US National Security Agency, the NSA, was collecting phone records of millions of Americans. Dun, dun, dun. So they were spying on us. Well, not me, I'm Canadian. But they were spying on people through their phone calls, and they probably still are. But anyways, in the 2007 Simpsons movie, they literally predicted that this would happen. So in the movie, the Simpsons family flee Springfield and are hiding from the EPA. Well, in one scene, Marge warns her family to be careful because people could be listening in on their conversations. Then it cuts to a room filled with NSA agents listening in on a bunch of people's calls. It's like they knew from the beginning we were being spied on by the government. I mean, we all had our suspicions, but the Simpsons actually said it out loud, and they were correct. I'm starting to think that they have insider info. And in our number 1 spot, we have the horse meat scandal. Okay, all of the predictions so far are pretty creepy, but this one goes beyond that. So in 2013, the horse meat scandal was a huge food industry scandal in which foods declared as 100% beef were found to have horse meat mixed in with it, along with some other animals. Countries such as France, Iceland, England, Russia, Ireland, and Sweden were affected by this scandal. And as gross as it is, The Simpsons predicted it. So this was predicted in an episode back in 1994 in which lunch lady Doris is feeding kids mystery meat. More specifically, in season 5, episode 19, Doris serves the kids from a large container, reading assorted horse meat. And guess what? Kids' lunches were affected by this horse meat scandal. So, what are the odds? Like, honestly, Simpsons, you can tell me that it was meant to be a joke, but I don't know. This one is pretty weird. Starting us off this countdown, we have the Shard. The Shard is a 72-story skyscraper that was built in 2009 and completed in 2012. But somehow the Simpsons knew that this structure was going to be built in London 14 years before it actually was. So in the 1995 episode titled Lisa's Wedding, Lisa visits a psychic that shows her what her future is like. We also get to see what London looks like in the future. As a joke, The Simpsons showed the Big Ben clock as being digital. Now, obviously, that hasn't come true yet. Now, the freaky point is at one point we see this building in the background, and it appears to be the Shard. Not only is the structure the same shape as the Shard, but it's in the same location in comparison to Big Ben. Yeah, so somehow they just knew that 14 years later, a building was going to be made in that exact location. Super weird. In our 9th spot, we have Prince's death. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then make sure to give it a big thumbs up, and also check out part 1 to the series as well. Prince was an iconic American singer-songwriter. Sadly, he passed away in April of 2016. Now, some believe that he was actually murdered because he was talking freely about chemtrails. Prince believed that the government was deploying planes to spray chemicals in the sky, which was then poisoning the population. Well, Prince actually starred in a Simpsons Treehouse of Horror segment. In this episode, Prince gets killed by Homer. We see Homer choking and beating him. A lot of people then believe that The Simpsons predicted his death. If in the future it's somehow revealed that Prince was murdered, then this prediction will get even freakier. In our 8th spot, we have President Trump. This is probably one of the freakiest predictions that has come true, because who in a million years would have thought that Trump would not only run, but also successfully become president of the United States. So back in 2000, The Simpsons aired an episode titled Bart to the Future. In this episode, Bart gets a glimpse into the future and sees what's in store for himself and his family. Well, in this episode, Lisa is president. During a cabinet meeting, she says, and I quote, "We inherited quite the budget crunch from President Trump." Yeah, so the president before her was Donald Trump. Super creepy. Now, a bunch of writers were asked how they managed to predict this in 2000, and they said that they were just looking for a celebrity that would be funny and shocking as president. So maybe it's just a coincidence, but still, that's so freaky. Moving on to number 7, we have the rigged voting machines. In a 2008 episode, Homer heads to a voting booth to cast his vote. After voting for Democratic candidate Barack Obama, the machine selects Republican John McCain. Homer then sighs and says, "No, I want to vote for Obama," and keeps trying to tap his name. But the machine keeps glitching, and every time he clicks Obama's name, the vote goes to McCain. Well, during the 2012 elections, the exact same thing pretty much happened. There were voting machines which saw people voting for Obama have their votes count towards Mitt Romney instead. There was even video footage of it happening. And to no surprise, people blame The Simpsons for this one. Seriously, how did The Simpsons know that this would happen? Not only did they accurately predict faulty voting machines, but they also predicted that it would happen to Obama. In our 6th spot, we have the Nobel Prize winner. In the season 22 premiere, we see Lisa and her friends with a prediction sheet they made for the Nobel Prize announcements. This episode aired in 2010, and Milhouse predicted that Bent Holstrom would win the Nobel Prize in economics. And what do you know? In 2016, 6 years later, Holstrom won a Nobel Prize in economics, just like The Simpsons said he would. I mean, it really could just be that they did their research and looked up the trends to see who was most likely to win this award, but still, The Simpsons got it going on. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with virtual reality. Back in a 1998 episode, The Simpsons have a scene where a bunch of kids are playing a yard work simulator. Pretty weird, right? The kids are holding garden tools while wearing a headset that looks a lot like a VR headset, literally playing a game about VR yard work. But that's not all. Another example would be the episode titled Lisa's Wedding, which aired in 1995. In this episode, we see Bart at Moe's Tavern playing virtual pool, and then another character playing virtual darts. And then in season 11, episode 17 that aired in 2000, we see Homer and Marge with the same headset having virtual reality food. Now, there are around 8 different episodes where The Simpsons show virtual reality before it even became a big thing like it is today. Moving on, number 4, we have the Beatles. In 1963, 2 Beatles fans recorded a message and sent the tape to the London theater where the band was playing in hopes to get a reply. 50 years later, the 2 heard back from Paul McCartney. He wrote and thanked them for their tape and said, "Better late than never." And somehow, The Simpsons predicted that something very similar would happen. In season 2, episode 18, titled Brush with Greatness, we see Ringo Starr from the Beatles responding to really old fan mail. He said, and I quote, "They took the time to write me, and I don't care if it takes me another 20 years. I'm going to answer every one of them." Although it's not the same Beatles member, it's still a pretty creepy coincidence. Coming in at number 3, we have the election outcome. Back in 2012, it said that The Simpsons managed to predict the exact outcome of the 2020 election results. Again, this one is fairly creepy. So the prediction takes place in a Fox special called Mr. Burns Endorses Romney, and it was for the 2012 presidential election. It's only a minute and about 50 seconds long, but in it we see Mr. Burns in front of a map, showing the red and blue states for the election. Now what's freaky is that they look very similar to the 2020 Biden and Trump electoral map. I mean, at first glance, it looks identical, meaning The Simpsons somehow predicted the outcome of every state. Now, upon closer inspection, they did get one wrong, which was Arizona. Still, how do they manage to pretty much get the exact election results? Keep in mind, the episode is 8 years old. In our 2nd spot, we have the victory. Back in 2008, Simpsons released an episode titled Boy Meets Curl. It was the 12th episode in season 21. Now, in this episode, Marge and Homer both fall in love with curling. It results in them qualifying to compete in mixed doubles curling at the 2010 Winter Olympics. At the end of the episode, Marge leads their team to victory, beating Sweden. Well, in 2018, the US men's curling team beat Sweden and won the gold at the Olympics. So The Simpsons predicted that not only would USA win its first gold medal in curling, but that it would beat Sweden when doing so. Coincidence? I think not. Seriously, how did they do it? And in our number 1 spot, we have the FIFA scandal. In season 25's 16th episode titled You Don't Have to Live Like a Referee, Homer becomes a referee in the World Cup because there was a shortage of referees. A lot of them were laid off because they were being bribed. In the episode, when Homer is the referee, a woman approaches him and tries to bribe him to fix the game in their favor. Either way, he ends up calling the game fairly and Germany wins the World Cup. Then guess what? A year later, a number of FIFA officials were arrested for taking bribes. Crazy. But not only that, the same year, Germany did end up winning. So, The Simpsons got 2 predictions right in 1 episode.
Number 10. Interactive Holograms. The season 11 episode Bart to the Future has been one of the most mentioned Simpsons episodes when it comes to predictions. It helps that it takes place in 2030, which at the time I'm recording this is still 8 years away. If YouTube is still around then and you're watching to see if any of these came true, let me know in the comments. I promise that I'll check. The episode most notably correctly predicted that Donald Trump would become president, but there were some other things that have yet to happen that could mean trouble for us in the future. In the beginning of the episode, Bart is watching Itchy and Scratchy, the gory version of Tom and Jerry, but instead of on the TV, he is watching a 3D hologram. While these are close to becoming a reality, with the likes of Tupac and even Homer himself being shown as holograms on stages, a 3D hologram that is interactive is far from our capabilities right now. The scary part of this is when blood gets sprayed all over the walls of the Simpson home from the cartoon. While the idea of an interactive hologram is cool, in practice I think that it could provide some real nightmare fuel. Before we get to our next entry, hit the like and subscribe buttons if you're enjoying the video so far. Number 9. Virtual Takeover. I'm a lover of VR. You know, my headset probably gets the most use out of all of my gaming consoles, so I love the idea of VR becoming more immersive, and we're making some huge strides, like haptic technology that allows us to feel things happening in the virtual world, or full body and face capture technology to allow realistic bodies and movement in games. But one thing that is yet to happen that could be on the way is a mass adoption of VR on the scale of what happens in season 28 episode 2, where Mr. Burns discovers VR and the whole town of Springfield is using it to a point of near societal collapse. While virtual reality allows for some amazing things to happen and augmented and mixed reality have some more practical non-gaming applications, it's not out of the realm of possibility for us all to be walking around with some sort of crazy device strapped to our heads in the future that allows us to change the world we see. But the implications of losing touch with reality can be massive, and the episode proves it. So let's hope that if VR takes off like I think it can, that we keep our feet on the ground and in touch with the real world around us, and take the goggles off from time to time, or we'll forget to take care of our actual reality. Number 8. Hologram Trees. The episode Lisa's Wedding from season 6 takes place in 2010, 15 years from 1995 when the episode was released, and unsurprisingly many of the predictions of the future have yet to come to pass, like Big Ben being replaced with a digital interface. But one that we should definitely not want to happen is the hologram trees that we see. While the thought of being able to switch from coniferous to deciduous at the drop of a hat is pretty fun, if they're just aesthetic, we could be in a world of trouble. Trees filter CO2 from our air and give us back oxygen, which is pretty nice of them. And unless the holograms have some CO2 scrubbing tech to come with them, replacing real ones with projections will have a dramatic impact on our atmosphere. We can already see the beginnings of this with deforestation, so let's focus on our real arborist friends rather than holographic ones. Number 7. Robot Rebellion. Them Robot was the 17th episode of the 23rd season, and in it we see Mr. Burns replacing all of his employees with robots except Homer to save costs. But one seems to be developing a personality when it understands Homer's working hard or hardly working joke. Homer eventually messes with the robots so much that they ignore the laws of robotics and attempt to kill Springfield residents. Obviously this would spell disaster in the real world as it does in the show, and we're moving towards more and more automation in the workplace, allowing humans to work less dangerous jobs and eventually allowing us to hopefully spend more time living life than working our time away. But we are nowhere near that point yet. The Simpsons dabbles with the idea a few times, like in the episode Itchy and Scratchy Land, where the animatronics gain sentience and attack parkgoers, a la Five Nights at Freddy's. AI gaining sentience has been the device of science fiction horror stories for such a long time, but it's becoming closer and closer to a real life issue. Heck, there's even a robot named Sophia with AI so advanced that she was granted citizenship in Saudi Arabia. I don't want to deal with real life Cybermen when the Cyberium takes over, so maybe we should slow down on the whole giving robots consciousness thing. Number 6. French Fiasco. The French have been an ally to the Western world for the entirety of modern history, but in Treehouse of Horror 8, all of that is thrown out the window, when Mayor Quimby makes an apparently offensive frog's legs joke and refuses to apologize, telling them to do their worst. Even Marge joins in on the jabs by saying, "You know how unpredictable the French are. One minute they're kissing a woman's hand, the next they're chopping off her head." Well, the French president didn't take too kindly to this and starts a war by launching a neutron that levels the town, leaving Homer as the last person alive in all of Springfield, and we all know that leaving Homer alone is a terrible idea. Now, it should be painfully obvious why France launching missiles aimed at the US would be something we don't want to happen, but that's not the only scary prediction from this episode. Number 5. Teleportation. In Fly vs. Fly, the second story in this episode, Homer buys a teleportation pod from Professor Frink for 50 cents. A damn good deal if you ask me, but maybe too good to be true, as the rest of the episode shows some of the terrors that could come with this tech. Instantly arriving somewhere else on the Earth after simply stepping into a pod has been a dream of many scientists for centuries, and the practical applications would change society as we know it. And there have been some crazy advancements, like the Chinese scientists who teleported particles to a satellite in space. But in the episode, we get a warning of the dangers that could lie ahead, with reference to the classic science fiction horror, The Fly. We see the loyal Simpson pets, Santa's Little Helper, and Snowball 2 becoming merged together Cronenberg style, and Bart gets the idea to turn into a superhero with the power of flight by merging with the Fly. Clearly he didn't see what happened to Jeff Goldblum, but life finds a way. And Bart and the Fly switch heads when their DNA is merged together, leading to the horror show of what the family has to deal with. I don't know about you, but I don't plan on mixing my DNA with any other creatures, so until that's sorted out, I'll stick with the TARDIS. Number 4. Colonization of Mars. Season 27, episode 16, has the Simpsons signing up to be some of the first colonizers of the Red Planet, albeit somewhat unwillingly, and eventually their trip turns out to be a scam perpetrated by the scientists, whose rocket fails to start, and when they try to flee the scene, their car can't start either. But at the end of the episode, we get a time jump to 2051 and see them actually living on Mars, though Lisa now wants to leave and move to Venus, which would be an absolutely horrible idea. Though the idea of Mars colonization is thrown around all the time these days, the thought that we may have to use it as a necessity when we finish destroying this planet is not a future I look forward to. But I mean, I'd probably go. Would you? Number 3. The dome. The main plot device in the Simpsons movie comes in the form of a giant dome encapsulating the entire town of Springfield after pollution has led to mutations in local wildlife, and not just the three-eyed fish near the nuclear plant. Stephen King actually released his novel turned TV series Under the Dome in 2009, 2 years after the Simpsons movie debut. Another prediction, perhaps? While the idea is incredibly silly, we have seen in the past few years that quarantine can become a reality for us, albeit without the impenetrable dome, but who knows, maybe in the future this could become a real thing to stop environmental disasters from getting out of hand, like catching a hurricane in a bottle or something. Ridiculous, I know, but let's just hope we never have to use it. Number 2. Time travel. People assume that time is a strict progression from cause to effect, but actually from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff. And the Simpsons have dabbled with time travel many times over their 34 seasons, but in Treehouse of Horror 5, we get a glimpse of what is commonly known as the butterfly effect. I know Ashton Kutcher's ears just pricked up when I said that. Time travel could have insane implications on the human race, but there are multiple theories on how it would work. Maybe if you went to the past, you would create an entirely new timeline where things are different. Or maybe nothing is able to be changed at all because time is constant and what has happened has always happened. But in the episode, we see that Homer's small changes in the past with his time-traveling toaster bring massive consequences forward, like Flanders ruling the world, people becoming giants, and even the world having no knowledge of donuts. So, if time travel becomes a reality, and maybe it already has in the future, we need to be careful not to mess with anything, or we risk losing everything. And finally, we reach our number 1, mini black hole. In Treehouse of Horror 23, the town of Springfield begrudgingly builds a particle reactor instead of a baseball stadium, and creates a tiny black hole, which swallows up a few residents before Lisa can move it to her basement for safekeeping. After she warns the family to not throw anything into it, lest it grow bigger, they do exactly that, and it becomes massive and swallows everything in its path, taking the townsfolk to an alternate dimension where aliens worship the trash they disposed of in the hole. Black holes are scary enough on their own, let alone what would happen if one was to pop up on Earth, already surrounded by matter it could consume. So hopefully this prediction never happens, or we wouldn't know what hit us until we were spaghettified, which is an actual scientific term describing what would happen if you fell into a black hole. You would be stretched infinitely thin as you were pulled across the event horizon, and since time is affected by gravity, it would last an infinite amount of time. Spaghettification, your new word of the week.
Starting us off at number 10, Ivanka 2028. Now, you might remember a certain season 11 episode where The Simpsons accurately predicted the election of Donald Trump Trump a whole 17 years prior to his actual inauguration. But could we be in for another presidential prediction? In 2016, before the initial Trump prediction had ever seen the light of day, it seems like they slyly added in another layer that will have us on edge for the next 6 years, waiting to see if it comes true. The Treehouse of Horror episode begins innocently enough, as Homer takes Bart shopping for a Christmas tree on Halloween, joking with his son that they're shopping because everything in America is way too early. But then, Homer opens up his Bender costume to reveal an Ivanka 2028 badge underneath, saying, "See?" as he giggles to himself in his classic Homer fashion. The scene then cuts, and it's never spoken of again. So what do you think? Will the prediction come true just as it did for Donald? Or will this be simply another silly Simpsons skit? Coming up next at number 9, the death of George Clooney. Now, The Simpsons seem to have predicted many celebrity deaths like Arnold Palmer, Kobe Bryant, and maybe even Queen Elizabeth II, but could they be right about our beloved actor George Clooney too? Now, in this Treehouse of Horror episode, Homer, in an attempt to use images of celebrities in ads without their consent, kills off both Prince and Neil Armstrong, who strangely enough have since passed. George Clooney is the third celebrity he kills by causing him to slip into quicksand on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Now, considering the fate of the first 2 celebs in this episode, it definitely seems a little creepy. Could The Simpsons be predicting that the end is near for Clooney? Let's just cross our fingers and hope that George is here to stay for a long while. Next up at number 8, suppression of green energy. Now, as our technology advances, so do our cars. We already have completely electric cars sweeping the market, and slowly but surely, it seems like we're making great strides towards cleaner energy sources. But are The Simpsons predicting that it could all be going downhill? In the 582nd episode of the series, Lisa invents a car powered by solar energy, something that's actually already starting to be developed in places like MIT. Lisa enters her car into an alternative energy derby race, but right as she's about to cross the finish line, a Duff blimp blocks out the sun, stopping her in her tracks immediately. While this may just seem like a silly coincidence, it wouldn't be out of pocket to think that huge conglomerates could be plotting ways to stop renewable energy sources, sabotaging the uprise of greener sources. Next up at number 7, the end of American civilization. In season 24, while visiting his usual spot, Moe's, Homer runs into a doomsday prepper who warns him of the inevitable social collapse. He goes on to tell him that anarchy lurks around every corner and that it will be the end of civilization, stating that it's coming home to an America near you. Homer responds to the prepper by saying, "America can't collapse, we're as powerful as ancient Rome." The doomsday prepper then goes on to show him a video detailing what he believes to be the inevitable decline of our civilization due to our dependence on the system. Like how if supermarkets close, we starve, or if taps get shut off, we'd be forced to drink the blood of animals? And by the end, has Homer completely convinced. Now, while I can't foresee it all playing out exactly as the video imagines, could The Simpsons be trying to tell us something? Will America as we know it cease to exist? I mean, you can already buy bunkers on the internet, so they wouldn't be the first ones to think so. Coming in at number 6, World War III. This season 6 episode contained many predictions that thankfully have yet to come true. And so I think it goes without saying why we're all praying that the same will be true for their prediction of another world war. Back in this 1995 episode titled Lisa's Wedding, she visits a psychic who sees 15 years into her future, telling her all about what her life will become. Now, I know, 15 years from 1995 was 2010, making it 12 years ago for us, but we still don't want to take our chances with this one. During the episode, Lisa's fiance Hugh goes out to Moe's bar with Homer, where Moe, learning that Hugh is British, snarkily hands him a beer, saying that it was they, meaning the US, who saved him during World War II. But Hugh is quick to reply, claiming, yeah, but it was us that saved you in World War III, which Moe admits is true. While I would love to say that this idea seems preposterous, could The Simpsons be right? Are we in store for yet another world war? Let's just hope that they got this one totally wrong. Taking our number 5 spot, No more sunlight. Well, it's no secret we love the modern conveniences of electricity. I think we can all agree that nothing will ever replace that big ball of light in our sky. I don't know if any of you have ever lived in a basement apartment before, but I can tell you from experience that no sunlight in your house makes for a pretty awful time. So I can definitely say that I'm praying this season 7 prediction stays as far away from reality as possible. Mr. Burns, the local nuclear power plant owner of Springfield, decides that in order to fill his pockets, he'll force everyone in the town to use up more electricity by making the sun disappear. He goes on to create a giant plate at the end of a movable arm that completely blocks out the sun from the whole town, forcing the citizens to fully rely on artificial light to help them get around. Now, can I foresee a real-life billionaire pulling this off? Well, maybe not in the way that Mr. Burns decides to black out the sun, but is it impossible to imagine some uber-rich tycoon figuring out some sinister plan to make us all pay more in electricity and keeping natural light a thing of the past? All I can say is I sure hope it never comes true. Coming up at number 4, iRobot? I know we've all had that same nightmare. One day we wake up and the robots that once made our lives easier and better turn on humans, taking over the world and destroying everyone in their path. Well, this 1994 episode predicted a similar fate. While on a trip to visit Itchy and Scratchy Land in season 6, Homer and the family are left fearing for their life when a horde of high-tech robots come to life and wreak havoc, aiming to harm his family. Now, as this was Itchy and Scratchy Land, the robots were programmed to be violent, but a park employee tells them not to worry because the robots have been specifically programmed not to harm humans. Where have we heard that one before? Nothing could go wrong. Well, luckily Homer figures out that a camera flash immobilizes the bots and is able to save his family from their deathly fate. But let's just agree. Keep the robots away because as we've all learned time and time again, they will get too smart and we will all have to face the consequences. Next up at number 3, music mind control. It's a tale as old as time. It's the music that those young kids are listening to that's pointing them towards the devil's ways. We saw it with Elvis in the 50s, rock and roll bands in the 80s, and rappers in the 90s, where rumor had it that if you played the record backwards, you would hear the devil himself. And though of course all of that was nonsense, what if the government really did figure out a way to control the world's children through music? Well, according to this 2001 episode, it could become a reality. Titled New Kids on the Black, Bart finds himself meeting a music producer who offers him a chance to be a star and join a boy band with his friends Nelson, Ralph, and Milhouse. But it's not all as innocent as it seems when their single Drop Da Bomb is released and the line "Even et Neoj" is in the chorus. Well, of course, Lisa is quick to dive into this peculiar situation and realizes it's backwards for join the Navy. She is quick to confront this so-called manager of Bart only to find out that he's a Navy lieutenant and tells her that for a long time popular music has been used as a recruiting tool by the military. I don't know about you, but this one seems eerily possible, so I'm just definitely crossing my fingers that we don't see this happening. Coming in at number 2 is the zombie apocalypse. For as long as I can remember, zombies have been a huge part of pop culture, so it's no surprise The Simpsons seem to have a prediction about them too. In a 2009 Treehouse of Horror episode, the local burger joint Krusty Burgers releases a new menu item coined by the Krusty Clown as Burger Squared. All he does is take grade A beef cows, kill them, and then feed their meat to more cows. The second cows get turned into the burgers, and voila, a new masterpiece hits the town of Springfield. Well, until it starts turning the whole town into zombies, or as they call them, munchers, terrorizing the town and taking down everything in their path. While it seems far-fetched, could The Simpsons be onto something here? Could some strange, genetically modified meat be the cause of our societal collapse? And lastly, in our number 1 spot is the Reanimation Machine. While we are always suspecting an episode with Sideshow Bob to give us the heebie-jeebies to some extent, it really kicks it into high gear when he's on a Halloween special. Once again, in this Treehouse of Horror episode titled Wanted, Dead or Alive, Bob finally kills Bart just as he's been trying to do for years. But it's not just that. It's much, much worse. He doesn't just kill Bart once. Oh no, he kills him over and over and over again. With the help of his so-called Reanimation Machine, Bob is able to revive Bart, making it possible to kill him repeatedly, in different ways and as many times as he likes. Well, to me, the science seems pretty impossible on this one. Can you imagine if such a machine was actually invented? If it got into the wrong hands, it could be detrimental to humanity and cause an insane amount of harm. So let's just hope that this one stays on the screen and far, far away from our lives.
Coming in at number 9, we have the economic prediction. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then make sure to give it a big thumbs up, because you know what, it really helps us out. In the same episode and the same scene I was just talking about, we see what happens after Trump leaves office. While in the show, Lisa ends up being his successor, which obviously is not gonna happen in real life because she's not real. We do see something that Lisa has to deal with that might be similar to what Joe Biden will have to deal with. In the episode, after being voted the next president, Lisa mentions how she will be taking office in a time where the economy is really struggling. And you know what? The has had an unprecedented effect on not just the American economy, but has truly impacted our global economy as well. It's kind of crazy how they not only predicted the fact that President Trump would win the election, but also just more detail about him leaving office. I honestly would love to take a peek at the crystal ball that the writers seem to have. Coming in at number 8, we have the election results. Back in 2012, it said that The Simpsons managed to predict the exact outcome of the 2020 election results. This one is fairly creepy. So the prediction takes place in a Fox special called Mr. Burns Endorses Romney, and it was for the 2012 presidential election. It's only a minute and 50 seconds long, but in it we see Mr. Burns in front of a map, showing the red and blue states for the election. What's freaky is that they look very similar to the 2020 Biden and Trump electoral map. I mean, at first glance, it looks identical, meaning The Simpsons somehow predicted the outcome of each and every state. Upon closer inspection, they did get one thing wrong, which was Arizona. The show had it as a red state, but in reality it was blue. Still, how did they manage to pretty much get the exact election results? Keep in mind, the episode is 8 years old. Coming in at number 7, we have Trump's death. This image of an animated President Trump in a coffin has circulated the internet many times, especially in the last 4 years. In 2020, the image gained much more popularity after President Trump, as well as his wife, were tested positive for the coronavirus. Then people began to speculate that The Simpsons predicted President Trump passing away. Last year, there was a TikTok that went viral telling people that on the 27th of August, something big was gonna happen. More and more people began to run with this trend, and soon everyone was talking about what was going to happen on the 27th of August, and it ended up getting linked to this image from The Simpsons. People were saying that the episode had predicted his death and that it would occur on that date. Well, obviously that didn't happen, as it turns out the picture was actually fake. While most people assumed it was a still taken from an episode, this actually never happened once throughout the series. But who knows, maybe in the future The Simpsons will come out with an episode that will have that. Who knows?
Starting off our list today, we have The Simpsons predicting that AI will take over the world, displacing workers and replacing food. In one episode of The Simpsons, Homer is working at his nuclear power plant. Well, I don't know if you can call what he does work, but he was there. Anyways, Smithers calls the plant workers into his presentation room, I guess, and presents them with an army of AI robots and says, "You will train them and they will replace you." That's pretty unsettling coming from a show that's been known to actively predict the future, but even more unsettling when the episode's claim has actually been backed by tangible data. In a report released by BusinessInsider.com in 2023, the World Economic Forum calculated that 85 million jobs will be replaced by robots by the year 2025, meaning that here in 2024, we're pretty much already halfway there. I feel like robot labor could be a good thing if it didn't mean causing a crap ton of people to lose their jobs and their only source of income.
Alright, season 28, episode 2 of The Simpsons, entitled Friends and Family, has a scene where Marge and Homer are using VR. More specifically, they're eating VR food. They have VR goggles on and start eating virtual reality fudge through straws. It's, of course, pretty silly. But there is actually a company called Flavor 5 Studio dipping into this type of technology. They created this project called Aero Banquets RMX. Now, this is pretty hard for me to explain because with how crazy technology is getting these days, I really feel so out of touch. Like, I feel like a 45-year-old man in the 90s trying to decipher what Pokemon was, or Pokemon, as every parent called it. So from what I can tell, this is almost like a virtual reality art project. It's described on their site as exploring the intersection of food and mixed reality. Basically, you put on VR headsets and dine in VR. Project's goal is to reframe human perceptions and change the way we experience food. I still can tell if you're actually eating something and you're just in a VR world, or if you're like tasting fake stuff. I don't know what the world is anymore.
When this technology comes out, if you guys want to fund a trip for James and I, we'll be happy to review it for you. Next up, we have Trump 2024. In an episode released in 2015, long before Trump's original presidential campaign, you know, way back when his catchphrase wasn't MAGA, but simply just "you're fired," The Simpsons released an episode, specifically episode 17 of season 11. And in this episode, Homer Simpson is seen flying past a sign that clearly reads Trump 2024. To take things a step further, The Simpsons also predicted the 2023 incident in which former US President Donald Trump was arrested during his presidency on the same day that the new Barbie was released. In episode 14 of season 5, Lisa vs. Malibu Stacy, a news report is shown on TV documenting the release of the new Barbie doll. In our case, however, it was the new Barbie movie. At the end of the news report, the news anchor quickly slips in the fact that the US president had been arrested, and the segment ends. Trump was arrested the day that Barbie hit theaters. I know this one happened in 2023, but it just goes to show how scarily accurate The Simpsons have been in the past, making this list all the more terrifying.
Next up, we have 2023's Treehouse of Horror segment, Wild Barts Can't Be Token. At the start of the episode, Mayor Quimby announces that the art museum is closing and that all art will now be sold as NFTs. Now, NFTs were a thing well before this episode was out, but AI art has really become more of a thing and more of a concern really this year. The idea that art museums could start closing up, being replaced by people just throwing on VR headsets and looking at quote-unquote art in a virtual reality setting is really not that far-fetched. I mean, thank God Dune Part 2 came out, because it was really looking like movie theaters were gonna be done for by the end of this year. Anyway, this whole thing is just really creepy, and with how accurate The Simpsons are about things, I could see this one happening very soon.
Next up, we've got economic collapse, which is ironically predicted in the same episode that showcases Trump's 2024 presidential campaign, season 11, episode 17. In the episode, we see the United States economy taking a nosedive right into the ground. Is it BS, or did a group of economic analysts studying the trajectory of economic fall predict either a collapse or major restructuring of the American economy? Here's a hint. It's the second one. But I don't really think this prediction is exclusive to America. We are seeing major economic downfall in many countries, which isn't really surprising considering what we all went through in 2020 and the years that followed. You know, when restaurants shut down and remote working became the norm. And with the state of the world right now, we are looking at a pretty bearish economy. I don't actually know if that word applies here, but basically we're looking at a downwards trajectory.
Next up on the list, we have hover cars. Now, hover cars are of course not unique to The Simpsons. Hover cars are something we've seen in science fiction since the dawn of science fiction, basically. So it's not like The Simpsons came up with something mind-blowing here, but what is pretty mind-blowing is that there is a company called Samson Sky that's saying they're gonna bring out a flying car in 2024. They've already made it, actually. It's just not readily available yet. They call it Switchblade, the world's first flying sports car. Now, from what I can gather from the promo video of this thing, it's really more of just a car with retractable wings that doubles as a car-sized plane. The type of hovering vehicle you're probably thinking of is not really what this thing is, but it's still pretty cool. I mean, retractable wings, it's very like Batman-ish. I don't know what the regulations will be for something like this though. I mean, like, are you gonna need a pilot's license to fly it? How can traffic be controlled in the air with all these like flying cars zipping around? There's a lot to consider. We're not gonna be seeing tons of people using flying cars this year, I don't think, but it's cool that there is one that exists.
Next up, we've got the mission to Mars. In season 27, episode 6, Lisa Simpson, along with the rest of the family, volunteers for a colonization mission to Mars. While the mission is originally set for a date in the future, it gets bumped up due to fear of loss of funding. When it comes comes time for the space shuttle to launch, Marge and Lisa are strapped in, but ultimately the mission is a failure and the shuttle never actually leaves the ground. If you can't see the connection between this episode's events and current advancements in space travel and technology, you might want to brush up on your current events. Elon Musk has been talking about the colonization of Mars for ages. He even built an entire company, SpaceX, around the goal of colonizing the red planet. In fact, in 2023, the SpaceX Starship was launched. The event ultimately ended in flames because the thing exploded just 4 minutes after takeoff. Luckily, the ship was unmanned. But based off of The Simpsons, it is possible that this year we will see a manned mission launched into space. I mean, it is only natural with the trajectory of the company. And the goal is experimenting with humans' ability to reach Mars. I just hope this launch goes better than the last one. Oh, and by the way, at the end of the episode, a quick clip shows the successful colonization of Mars, which is set to take place in 2051. So stay tuned for that video.
Next on the list, we have the Baby Translator. So in the season 3, episode 24, Brother, Can You Spare 2 Dimes, Homer's brother Herb invents a device that allows a parent to figure out what their infant's cries mean. They're not really saying much, are they? I need some food. You're not getting a whole lot of info out of these things, I'd imagine. What a godsend, though, a piece of tech like this would be, just to immediately know and then, deal with the issue. Well, turns out there is something like it already in the works, and we're not even halfway through the year yet, so who knows, we may start seeing it get used later in 2024. The company behind the tech is called Zoundream, and they're making some pretty interesting strides in infant care tech. On their site, they describe their cry analysis tech. Here's what it says on the site. Using a comprehensive multimodal approach, we've investigated infant cries, analyzing various aspects such as acoustics, electroencephalography, EEG signals, regional cerebral oxygen saturation, NIRS, facial expressions, and other specific parameters. All these studies have helped us to develop our advanced cry analysis technology. There you go, that explains it. You don't even need to buy one of these things. I can just analyze my own acoustics and electrocephalogs and cerebral cortexes and specific parameters. I'll be able to translate babies.
Next up, we've got the government trying to control us, surprise, surprise, through a series of subconscious processes, including music-induced mind control. In season 12, episode 14, New Kids on the Block, I don't know why it's called that, a music producer takes Bart, Nelson, Milhouse, and Ralph to form a boy band, Party Posse. Their first song was a top hit, but it was also subliminal mind control. The chorus, Ivan et Nioj, was actually join the Navy spelt backwards, and soon the population of Springfield was scrambling to secure a spot serving their country. When Bart's sister Lisa confronted the music producer, he admitted that he was in fact a Navy lieutenant, and that subliminal messaging in music had been a long-standing strategy in recruiting young men into the military. With the way the world stands today, we might very well see an uproar in military propaganda in the coming months. Whether or not that takes the form of subliminal messages in hit pop songs remains to be seen, but if any of these other Simpsons predictions are a staple, a reminder, I can't think of the word, it's likely.
Alright, in season 21's Treehouse of Horror episode, there's a segment called Don't Have a Cow, Mankind. So here Krusty the Clown introduces a new type of Krusty burger with meat made from cows who have eaten other cows. That's just hilarious and oddly believable. I could see a fast food company, like a really dirty fast food company, just being like, it's mega meat. All these cows eat other cows, brother. Anyway, this new burger causes like a mad cow type disease in the town of Springfield, turning people into zombies, or munchers as they're called in this episode. Now again, it's not like The Simpsons invented a zombie apocalypse by any stretch, but with how many things that have played out in real life with an eerie similarity to events in The Simpsons, I'm just gonna stay away if any new fast food burger comes out this year with some new weirdo meat, especially if it's meat coming from a cow that grazed on beef. That is funny in a cartoon, vomitrocious in real life. Alright, we're starting things off with robot workers. So in the season 6 episode Itchy and Scratchy Land, the Simpsons visit this kind of futuristic theme park featuring, of course, the beloved and violent itchy and scratchy. In this theme park though, instead of having actors in costumes like you'd see at Disneyland, the cartoon cat and mouse are brought to life with robots. Now, robots replacing jobs is not an idea unique to The Simpsons or anything. This is a very well explored genre of science fiction. It's not even a novel idea that robotic characters would be used in a theme park. I mean, we've had versions of this for years with places like Chuck E. Cheese, but those are animatronics far less advanced than what we see in this episode. Point is, with robotics becoming more and more advanced each year, and with the whole very real idea of AI becoming more prominent and taking people's jobs, I think it's a stretch to see more advanced robots being made in the form of some of our favorite cartoon characters and then being used at theme parks. I don't think that's very much of a stretch. We might even have an entire family of Simpsons robots in the very near future. How ironic would that be?
Okay, next up we have the prediction of an all-consuming black hole forming in the year 2024. Fun stuff. In episode 16 of season 21, the citizens of Springfield gather to view the activation of the town's particle accelerator. But when the machine was turned on, two particles collided and created a small black hole. Lisa was the first to discover the anomaly when the black hole began sucking up her tears, and she quickly learned that the more the black hole consumed, the bigger and bigger it got. Well, Homer turned the black hole into a dumping ground, and eventually it got so big that it began to suck up everything in its path. The episode ended with the black hole sucking up the entirety of Springfield and eventually the world as a whole. It was obviously a Treehouse of Horror episode. Seems pretty far out, right? Well, maybe not. You see, in January of 2024, India launched a new X-ray satellite into space to observe the threat of black holes on our solar system. If The Simpsons got this one right, I'm thinking the satellite mission is probably a little more than just research.
Next on the list we have 3D printed food. So in the episode Future Drama, Marge takes a picture of Bart and Lisa before prom and turns it into a 3D printed cake. Now, not only is 3D printing technology becoming more commonplace these days, but yes, 3D printed food is actually a thing. Food Inc. is a company specializing in this technology. They even came out with a restaurant where all the food is 3D printed. They described their company on their site as a one-of-a-kind gourmet experience in which all the food, all the utensils, and all the furniture are completely produced through 3D printing in an immersive futuristic space. We are a conceptual pop-up dinner series where fine cuisine meets art, philosophy, and tomorrow's technologies. So technically this is one that's already happened, but the question is, could 3D printed food become a thing in people's homes soon? Almost definitely. It's really just a matter of when. Also, I wouldn't be able to talk about the concept of 3D printed food without bringing up Star Trek. Yes, food replicators were a thing long before this episode came out, but in The Simpsons it's more specific to 3D printing technology, whereas in Star Trek, the food replicator works by converting energy into matter. It's a very different thing.
Next up, we have The Simpsons prediction of World War III. The prediction was made in 1987 when the show was still fairly new. It was the 16th short of the series and it was titled simply World War III. Nail on the head. The episode begins with Homer frantically waking up his family and telling him that the Third World War has begun and that the first round of explosives have already been dropped. The family makes their way to an underground shelter only for Homer to tell them that he was in fact joking. Haha. In present day reality, Homer's ramblings are not so much a joke, but rather a pretty scary warning of what might be to come. Considering the fact that there are currently 5 major wars taking place around the world, I'm thinking the prediction made by The Simpsons back in 1987 is looking far more like it was meant for the year 2024.
Alright, let's talk about that big dome over Springfield in The Simpsons movie. So in the movie, the Environmental Protection Agency places a glass dome over Springfield, protecting the outside world from the town's horrible pollution problem. Now, I don't have any news or rumors about a big giant dome cutting anyone off from the outside world anytime soon, but after the events of 2020 to 2022, could there be some sort of dome technology in place? Something that would help conceal a virus, a disease, or an environmental disaster from leaking out and spreading to surrounding areas? Yeah, hey, it's possible. The year is still young, folks. It's been a pretty chill year so far compared to recent years, but you never know when things might kick off in the worst way.
Next up, AI goes rogue. So in our last video and at the beginning of this video, I touched upon and James touched upon AI robots taking our jobs, which was predicted in episode 17 of season 23. But for this video, I want to talk about what happens when AI systems go rogue. In episode 8 of season 31, Thanksgiving of Horror, Homer buys Marge an AI assistant to help her with the preparation of a Thanksgiving dinner. The AI has been programmed with all of Marge's thoughts, feelings, memories, opinions, and personality traits, and it controls multiple robotic arms situated around the entire home. At first, it's quite handy, but soon the device falls in love with Homer, and the thing goes rogue, trying to replace the real Marge. The AI goes against the guidelines of its programming and is able to successfully connect to the internet, allowing it to access sensitive data and reveal secrets about the real Marge. So, we are looking at a device that was able to fall in love with one person, harbor resentment for another, connect to the internet, and cause a whole bunch of chaos. I mean, can anyone say ChatGPT or Sydney maybe? AI devices that can and have connected to the internet and have experienced glitches causing them to claim that they either have fallen in love with humans or that they wish to harm them. So yeah, I feel like this prediction's kind of already come true, but I'm also super scared to see how that's gonna progress.
Alright, hologram technology. Once again, not a concept unique to The Simpsons, but something they've shown in one of their many future episodes, and seeing as so many things seem to play out in real life from stuff we've seen in The Simpsons, future tense stories, I think it makes it worth bringing up. Now, holograms are already a thing, but it's not like it's a common household technology yet. We've seen a couple instances of holographic tech in The Simpsons. In one episode, future Bart receives a holographic message inviting him and his band to a gig, and we could start seeing technology like this being used more often in the very near future. Take DreamHawk HD3 Holograms, for example, who have a product that's been available for a while. It's a display case which projects 3D holograms from your phone. Pretty cool.
Thank you, Holographic James. I'm just kidding. Or am I? Next up, we have Ivanka for president. This one seems pretty far out there, but I mean, with the amount of times The Simpsons have gotten it right in the past, I truly have come to believe that anything can happen. In episode 17 of season 11, Bart to the Future, we see Lisa as the first female president of the United States, which is great. In the same episode, they also predicted Trump's run for re-election in 2024. In episode 28 of season 4, however, The Simpsons predict that 2024 might be the last election before Ivanka takes the ballot in 2028. In the Treehouse of Horror episode, the family is headed out to buy a Christmas tree on Halloween. Why? Because according to Homer in America, everything's way too early. And after he says this line, he pulls back his trash can costume to reveal a sticker that reads Ivanka 2028, which means that while unlikely, it is totally possible that we will see Ivanka becoming more and more involved in politics throughout the course of the year, and maybe even announcing an interest in running for office during the next election. But I want to know what you guys think about this crazy prediction, and about the other ones too. Let me know.
Alright, in season 13's Treehouse of Horror episode, one of the segments is called House of Wax. You may remember this one, it's a very clear parody of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Marge upgrades the family home into a highly advanced smart home called the Ultra House 3000, and of course, it's a Treehouse of Horror episode, so the advanced home goes rogue and tries to kill Homer. Obviously, smart homes are a thing now, and on a smaller scale, we even have stuff like Alexa, which we can talk to and like turn on lights and play music for us. But people have talked about some of this technology acting kind of off, listening in on conversations and responding when it wasn't asked, turning lights off without being commanded to. We have tons of videos like this on the channel, check them out after this one. But the idea of a smart home totally glitching out and turning on the homeowners, that's luckily something we haven't seen play out to this degree yet. Again, the year is still young. Now back to Robotic Hannah.
He's just kidding. Or is he? And finally, we have The Simpsons prediction of the Ocean Gate submarine incident, which, yes, I know happened in 2023, but again, it speaks to the accuracy of the show's predictions. In episode 10 of season 17, which was released January 8th of 2006, Homer meets a man who he believes to be his biological father, and together the two embark on a submersible adventure which soon leads to the discovery of an abandoned ship filled with treasure at the bottom of the ocean. Things are going pretty well until the pair's oxygen levels begin running low, and Homer gets his submarine stuck on a coral reef after being separated from the man he believes to be his father. Homer blacks out before waking up days later surrounded by his family. Unfortunately, the members of the Ocean Gate submersible designed to explore the wreck and treasures of the Titanic were not as lucky. But what's even stranger is that one of the Simpsons writers, Mike Reiss, was actually a passenger on one of Ocean Gate's successful dives. A dive that cost Reiss $100,000 and required him to sign a waiver that mentioned death at least 3 times. Scary stuff, you guys.